Greetings everyone. Pastor Chuck here to greet you and want to use this newsletter to just update you on our trip to Burundi. We had some obstacles, of course, and many of you are aware of that. You prayed for us, and so we appreciate that. Thank you. Once we got the trip going, we had to sequester and quarantine for 7 days in a hotel. But once we got that over, we accomplished quite a bit. Let me just give you some numbers for perspective. We did 13 graduations while we were there, did 3 leadership seminars, 3 women's conferences, also spoke at 3 crusades and spoke at a youth crusade, as well as training 105 facilitators for future Bible schools for Burundi. So we accomplished a lot, and just appreciate all of your support and help in that, and rejoice and thank you for your prayers and support. So let me just share some personal things through people's eyes of Burundi that were accomplished there while we were there. First, I want to introduce you to Pastor Marie. Pastor Marie is in Kayenza, and she is a mother of 2 daughters. Her husband left her, abandoned her, and she's raising her daughters by herself. She's also taking care of her elderly not grandparents, but her elderly parents. And so the Lord called her to start a church there in rural Burundi, Kayenza. And she hesitated. She felt overwhelmed, felt like she couldn't do that. It was too much, and it was a distance away from where she actually lived. But in the end, she surrendered and said she would do it. So some churches raised funding to build her a church there in Kayenza. And it was about 90% done. And the whole building collapsed. There was a structural problem, an issue, and the whole building collapsed. And you can imagine the stress and the strain that put on her. Anyway, the churches band together again, raised funds, rebuilt the church. And so she was in the process, and she said to the Lord, how can I touch this community? And the Lord led her to take a step of faith. She went to the bank and borrowed 2 million Burundian francs. And in American dollars, that's about $200 and probably $20 or $30. But it's a lot of money there, $620. And she took that money, bought seed with it, found some other needs, met the needs in the community, and began to teach the people how to plant crops and take care of their crops. And when we were there, the church was up to around 80, or between 80 and 100. And she had gone out and, of course, taken this step of faith and borrowed this 200 or 2 million Burundian francs. As we heard her story, the Lord tugged at our hearts, and Harvest Preparation made a commitment to pay that debt for her. And we were able to do that before we left. And she was greatly appreciative, wonderfully encouraged. And the story is ongoing of the people are being touched and the way they're being touched. And so just an amazing story of what she's accomplishing through her funds and her faith. I'd like to share with you a wonderful testimony of a teenager. Of course, we spoke in 3 different crusades, and we always have a lot of people that surrender their hearts to the Lord. We always see a lot of miracles in those crusades. And it's not something we do everywhere, but our national representative for Burundi is the head of the National Evangelical Association, and he loves to plug us in and let us speak at crusades. So we were doing a crusade one day, and this teenage girl, I watched her come into the crusade, and so we began the crusade and worshiped and shared the gospel. Then we had an altar call, and always after the altar call, then we have a call for healing for various needs and personal, whether it's healing or emotional needs, whatever it is. And after we get done, we ask for testimonies. And so this young lady came up, and she was probably 14, 15. And she testified that when she came, under her left arm, she had a tumor the size of her fist. And the Lord had touched her. And she couldn't even lift that arm, that left arm, because it was in pain. And the Lord touched her and healed that, took away that tumor. And she could raise her arm up, and she moved it. It was under her left arm, move it, and was just radiant with joy of the Lord having touched her in a personal way like that. So it was amazing. Let me talk to you about one of our regional representatives, Nepo, Pastor Nepo. And Pastor Nepo had caught the vision as well to reach out into the community. And we have a community development portion where we teach animal husbandry, how to rotate crops, how to fertilize crops, that sort of thing. Practical things that can help the quality of life of the Burundians. And so he had caught a vision of that, and the government began to hear what he was doing. And the government stepped in, and they actually bought some acreage, they called hectares there, and bought seed for him to plant, and actually provide labor to help with that. And they challenged him and said, okay, show us what you can do. We went to one of his cornfields there, and the corn was amazing. In fact, right next to it was a traditionally planted one with no fertilizer or anything of that nature. And the corn looked rather emaciated. The ears of corn on his stalks were literally from my wrist to my elbow and about 4 inches in diameter, and just was amazing. And we were also able to, and we don't normally do this, but Harvest Preparation raised funds to buy him a cow that was in calf, and he would use the manure to fertilize. He would sell the milk, use some for his family, and then in August he'll have another calf. And so we're teaching the people that there are ways that they can have small businesses, that sort of thing, to make a living and to help their situation. So they're ones who are raising rabbits and using them for their own consumption, sharing those with others and selling them. Others are raising goats. And it's just amazing, this community development course, how it is affecting the nation and the practicality for the people. So Nepo has caught that vision, and it's interesting that the government's aware of what is going on. We had one graduation that the governor of the province where we were at and his head administrator both attended the graduation, and they both spoke afterwards, and they raved about the Harvest Preparation School of Ministry and how it's affecting the people. In fact, the head administrator made the statement that the work that we're doing there is like the hand of God reaching down to the people to touch them and to help them. And so it's a good testimony. The government's aware of what's going on. So as we think about, the Bible talks about in the Great Commission about discipling the nations. How do we do that? How do you disciple a nation? And I believe that, John Maxwell makes a statement, how do you build a great church? You build a great church one person at a time. How do you disciple a nation? Well, from our perspective, you take one leader and you train them, you equip them, give them a biblical foundation, and then let them disciple people. And if you do that enough times, the nation becomes affected. And we have over 5,000 students now in Burundi. When we left, they had signed up for the new schools. We took equipment for 50 schools, and we had around 3,000 more students that want to be a part of the school. One of the graduations I did, the bishop who hosted that graduation at his church, when he heard the testimonies of students, got up at the end of the graduation and said that because he was so affected by the testimonies that he was going to immediately join the school, the Harvest Preparation School of Ministry. So it's affecting the nation. Now, we had an audience with the former First Lady of Burundi, Miss Denise, Her husband, sadly, a year ago passed away. They had been in office probably for around 12 years. Her husband was the president, and they began to change the atmosphere. And we had an audience with Miss Denise, and she now is a pastor who heads up a 10,000 member church in Burundi, in Bujumbura, the capital. And her heart is that she loves children. She is actually raising 15 children on her own. And she is well aware of what Harvest Preparation is doing. But here's what's interesting. A number of years ago, around 2017, they're both Christians. And again, he passed away last July. But they're both Christians, and they went to a crusade, and they received a prophetic word. And out of that prophetic word, the president came back, and he wrote a declaration and said that now Burundi would begin to worship and follow the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And actually, that declaration in every province, there is a marker in the main part of the city that marks the date of that and references Joshua 24, about the change that's taken place. And the testimony of the leaders in Burundi is that they now are a nation at peace. And so it's humbling to be a part of that. It is amazing to see what the Lord is doing. And we are excited about the future for Burundi and the other nations that we are touching. So as you can see in the window behind me, Mother Nature is, it's snowing here in Ohio. And but as I close this time today, I just want to encourage you and challenge you to fully enjoy the power of the resurrection. Go and touch somebody who needs touched with the love of God. And as we move forward in these days, know that God is working in powerful ways and that He is moving among the church, and that we can have great hope, great expectation, and great be overwhelmed with the wonders of living in and functioning in the kingdom of God, serving the King whose death, burial, and resurrection is the greatest historical event in all of history. And hopefully for each of us is the most transforming thing that's ever happened to our lives. May the Lord bless you. Enjoy your celebration of the resurrection, and know that we love and appreciate you. God bless you.